Hello, everybody. We are back. My name is Jeff,
And I'm Steve.
and today we're here to talk about genre in a form we haven't really focused on before, which is the romantic comedy genre. That's right. We're, we're really bouncing around.
A genre, Jeff, that you might know, but that I am fairly well versed in, having
Okay.
had a massive childhood crush on Meg Ryan back in the
Oh,
90s.
yes.
I mean, Meg Ryan, the pinnacle of romantic comedy queens. And I have seen not every Meg Ryan movie, but like most Meg Ryan movies. And this was actually very similar to a lesser known Meg Ryan film. Oh, we haven't talked about what film we're talking about. So yeah,
We haven't.
which one are we
I
talking
like
about
that kickoff. I like that kickoff because I mean there are some amazing Meg Ryan movies, of course. But we're going to talk about a recent movie that come up. I Want You Back, and the reason that I proposed this one to Steve and he agreed, thankfully, to talk about it is because not to tie everything back to Wheel of Time, for real, not, but just more to talk about kind of endings and how the feel of a story, any story in any medium, can be very much affected, at least I believe, through how satisfying that ending is. So this is absolutely going to be a spoiler for the video. If you have not yet watched the movie I Want You Back and you are curious about it, pretty soon we're going to be spoiling the ending, so you may not want to listen to us unless you're like my mom and you like hearing endings first. So if that's the case, stick around. But either way, Steve, I think you were going to tell
My
us
mom
more.
does the same thing. She reads the last pages of the book.
Does she? Yeah, no, that's my mom totally does that. She'll just like bounce around. She'll read parts she likes. I think at a certain point, I don't know. I think certain people don't want to be surprised by it, right? Or they want to know a guarantee. There is a standard in book publishing with romantic comedies to a degree that, well, I shouldn't say romantic comedies, romances, that they're known as like, this is a good ending book. Like this book is advertised as, good ending versus like there could be a twist or bad thing, because people are going in wanting to read something feel good, and they don't want to be, they want to know that it's going to all turn out okay and not have that expectation subverted, basically, which I think is a fascinating thing, because that doesn't happen in like the fantasy genre so much. I mean, I guess back in the day, people really had, that main character armor, but then after George R. R. Martin, I feel like with Grimdark, and then, all bets are off with that. But anyway, I'm spiraling. You and Meg Ryan, go ahead.
Well, so this film, I Want You Back,
yes,
immediately struck me as extremely similar to a movie called Addicted to Love. This is a lesser known Meg Ryan movie. Meg Ryan and Matthew Broderick is the male lead in that one. They are both jilted lovers or jilted, significant others, just like in this movie. They meet each other, just like in this movie, and they plot to break up their other couples.
Because is in that one, don't each of their exes end up dating?
Yeah, so the reason they like Meg Ryan and Matthew Broderick meet is because Matthew Broderick's basically low-key stalking his ex-girlfriend, and then Meg Ryan kind of catches him doing this, and she's plotting just this like elaborate revenge against her significant other. So one thing that I thought immediately that I liked better about that movie is it made more sense why the core couple is together than in I Want You Back, which is just, it's kind of random, and like at the beginning I'm like, well, why are they hanging out with each other? I don't think I would have taken this person up on this.
I expected the other couples to get together, you know what I mean? I thought like they were going to go on Facebook or whatever, and he was going to see his ex with her boyfriend, and that was going to then create this, additional dynamic that then fuses it. But maybe the people who made this movie were familiar with Addicted to Love and like, listen, we're gonna do Addicted to Love, but wait for it they're dating other people. That's right.
I feel like there's no way the makers of this movie weren't familiar with that movie. I feel like there's no way the makers of this movie aren't familiar with Meg Ryan's entire oeuvre. I don't think that's possible. In fact, like I not only felt it felt very similar to that movie, but like a lot of romantic comedy type things come into this movie, including the ending. So I'm interested in your feelings about the ending, because you pitched this to me as you wanted to talk about endings. I got the impression that you are dissatisfied with the ending of this film.
There's just one moment. That I like really want to talk about from because to me, like this at its heart, our channel is a writing book story channel. You know what I mean? Because that's sort of our roots, if you will. And there is obviously writing that happens in movies. So to me, there's just this element of a mistake that was made that I think could easily be fixed. And so I think this was just kind of an opportunity to be like, hey, look at this great case study of this happening, and here's something we can all like benefit and learn from for the future, because that's always my goal, right? Like, let's learn and improve, right? So we can make better movies. But anyway, yes, you are correct that I'll go and say overall I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the cast. I wasn't immediately thinking of Addicted to Love. As soon as you brought it up in this, I was like, oh, you're totally right. This is Addicted to Love. I did not think about that at all when I was watching it. You mentioning that as a quick aside makes me think of our conversations about sort of timeless stories like Batman. We were saying that there's always going to be like, Batman continually gets reinvented. There keep being new Spider-Man movies. It feels like this is a trope that will continue every now and then to come back up, of like the exes meet up and they get to have that commiseration in some form or another, right? Overall, I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. I had a good time watching it with my wife, up until I was betrayed at the end. But anyway,
all right, well, let's get to that ending, because I felt like the ending was also kind of borrowing from other romantic comedies, and I think I'm maybe more interested in kind of assessing where we're at with romantic comedies. Because this felt, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the same things you did. I like the two leads. I like all the side cast in it. The guy from The Good Place, who's like the musical director, I always find him endlessly amusing. And so there were a lot of things I liked about it, but he
was great as a totally different type of character too. To get to see him as that, which is like very different. I was like, I am so enjoying this part. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah, but the same still like just offbeat kind of delivery where it just doesn't feel quite natural, right? But you kind of like it anyway. I was watching it, I couldn't help feeling that like we're just recycling romantic comedy things now. And I think there have been like think pieces and culture pieces about like our romantic comedy is dead. And then like every once in a while now they just, I think, permanently live on streaming. I don't know if there's going to be like a romantic comedy that does well in a theater anymore. Right? I mean, I guess Crazy Rich Asians was the last one maybe that did like really well in a theater, but they all feel like they're Netflix now. Their Prime is where they live, which is fine,
there's
right?
So many too. Like when you go to, when you see like related to, you can just go down this rabbit hole of like, oh my god, I never even heard of any of these movies ever coming out. But you're right, it is an oddity that we don't have these huge romantic comedy blockbusters like we did, a decade or two ago, right?
Well, before we get to the ending, let's go back over like the basic plot for anybody who hasn't seen it. Going into spoilers now. I think I would generally say it's like thumbs up. It's worth a watch. It's pleasant, to be with for a while.
Yeah. And I really do think the casting was well done. Like I want to give whoever was the casting director for this, I think did a solid job with it.
Also, big props for the play within a play being Little Shop of Horrors, the best musical.
Dude, that is one reason I thought you would actually like it. I didn't tell you, right? But I thought that you would be jazzed.
Great rendition of Suddenly Seymour happens in the film. Thought it was great.
It was a good rendition of Suddenly Seymour.
Yeah, good rendition. Also, you get a great money shot of the real original play ending in the movie. So I really like that. But so we have our two jilted couples. One, Charlie Day is the guy in it. The girl from Jane the Virgin. I'm not sure, what her name is.
I'm actually familiar with Jane the Virgin. Yes.
Yeah. So that's her, and she dumps him. And then we have, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. Do you know the name of the girl?
I was not as familiar with that actress. She looked really familiar. Like I was like, wait, I know this actor. Jenny Slate.
Yeah, Jenny Slate. And she, I think famously,
Mhm.
although I didn't remember this, but my wife reminded me that she was fired for SNL from SNL. She was an SNL cast member for a very brief time for saying fuck live on Saturday Night
Something
Live.
about her character makes me believe that.
Yeah.
Like, I believe she would just say that. No, wait, who is she in Zootopia?
She was in Zootopia, right?
Yeah, anyway.
Well, she has a very distinctive voice, and that's
does.
why also. So then she gets dumped by her boyfriend, and they're both these jilted lovers. They meet each other because they work in the same building,
Right.
and he just hears her crying.
Which,
in the
okay, I have
stairwell.
to put aside there. What retirement community exists on like a floor of a big building? That when, like, you know, his job was so like, I like him having that job. I like him having this goal to help people, but that part to me was tough. Like I completely get a dentist office, absolutely being on one floor of a building, but the whole retirement community on another one, I was like, but anyway, please continue.
Yeah, it was kind of weak. It was kind of sloppy, and I even feel like both of those side plots. Like again, when I'm comparing to Addicted to Love, you don't have these side plots where the people are gonna like find their true calling. And I think like a lot of people love this stuff, but I'm like, I don't care about them finding their true calling in life. It's too aspirational. It's too like hallmarky. It just like makes me cringe.
I think it was an awkward thing to try to make them to get them to meet. I think by making it not as immediate, you do get the benefits of there are these side plots, but then you got to handle side plots, and then your movie isn't as direct. You know what I mean? So I think
exactly, and it goes into a lot of side plots where our two leads, who we're supposed to be watching falling in love with each other, aren't really in the same movie for a big part of this, because they basically plot to break up. Each of their individual exes is now dating somebody else, totally other character, and they both plot separately to break up the other one's ex so that both couples can get back together. So Charlie Day is going to go find Jenny Slate's ex and break them up. Her ex is dating just this like gorgeous restaurant owner. We don't really learn much about her, honestly, really, other than she's like,
we learn way more about Jason.
Yeah, we learn way more about her Jenny Slate's ex than we do about who he's dating.
Exactly. Like he's a character in the movie. Like he like comes back. He's got a wine scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that I didn't even think about that till now. But like his new girlfriend gets very short shrift in the film. Very opposite from then Charlie Day's ex, who is dating the guy from The Good Place, who's directing a high school musical version of Little Shop of Horrors. And then so he becomes like a major character, and Jenny Slate's trying to break him up, and Jane the Virgin. Yeah. So then it progresses. Both these side plots kind of progress. Jenny Slate succeeds in breaking up Charlie Day's girlfriend and this guy through this like kind of sort of humorous, sort of just uncomfortable threesome whole side plot. And then Charlie Day fails miserably to break up Jenny Slate's boyfriend with his new girlfriend, and he actually ends up proposing.
On friend and not enough on like because they set it up that way. She's like, you can't get the girl, like you can't beat my man, you know what I mean? It's like, but you could be his friend. But like, so what that does then is that stops us really learning about the other girlfriend.
Right. Because he's not trying to court her. Right. Weird asymmetry.
It does create this asymmetry, which I mean, in some ways is maybe good, because then we're not worried about quite as many characters, but then it also doesn't feel like even-handed in terms of learning about them. So I mean, there's just a lot of these complications because they've got them dating other people. And like you said, which I wasn't even thinking of, I'm really glad you brought it up, that it then separates our two characters that are supposed to be falling in love. Whereas if they're following their exes who are together than they are together, following the exes and having those experiences together and growing. So, yeah.
Okay, so that gets us basically to the end where Charlie Day fails. Jenny Slate succeeds though, and Jane the Virgin calls Charlie Day back and is like, oh, I want to get back together. And then like he's like, oh, thank you so much to Jenny Slate, who isn't getting back together with her boyfriend. And then Jenny Slate's real sad because she's like, well, A, she's the one who's stuck alone, and B, I mean, all the kind of love story between her and Charlie Day kind of happened right at the beginning. So you kind of just kind of have to like buy into that right at the beginning because they're not with each other for like the entire rest of the movie.
He gave her a book.
Oh, right. He gave her a book, which is very important because she opens up later, because originally she's like, I hate this book. The book is something about just it's a self-help book for finding your calling or something. Yeah, exactly. Parachutes or something, I don't know. And there's one other big callback that happens where they have an argument about when you're on a plane, if the plane is going down, the air masks fall down, and she's like, I would want somebody to help me put on my air mask, and he's like, that's not actually what you should do. You should always put your own on first because you need oxygen going to your brain to be able to help other people, otherwise you're freaking useless. You know, the correct.
And of course Steve supports it.
But not the romantic thing. And so that's another callback that happens. But anyway, this all kind of comes to a head because Charlie Day has become really good friends with the guy he was supposed to be breaking up with, his girlfriend. And also, and another thing that I was like, would never happen, completely unrealistic. That guy, Jenny Slate's ex-boyfriend, invites her to his wedding with the very next girl he dated. I was like, no, this movie has gone too far into fantasy. I cannot accept that would ever happen.
Well, because they didn't set his character up that way. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't set up as, still worried about her. Like he butt dials her, you know what I mean? And then hangs up partway through the conversation. Like we did not get that. That's a great example of like a writer doing something for plot reasons only. Like, I need to get all these people back together again. Let's do it this way, right? Like that doesn't actually line up with the character. And I wish they had, if they wanted to do that, set him up in that way so it would be more realistic.
So then anyway, basically what happens is everybody has a confrontation because they all meet, not expecting to meet at the wedding.
I'm sorry, I have to say something. Like he's a personal trainer. Like he could totally be the type of personal trainer that's like still calling and be like, are you doing your workouts? Like, I'm worried about you. Like, did you find like they could have had little moments like that actually fed into his character the way he was. I'm not saying we need to talk more about that. I'm just saying that there are solutions to these problems and I wish they had done them.
Possibly. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine anybody pulling that move.
Oh, no, completely. It's just unrealistic to begin with. And that's what I'm saying. Like you need some sort of cell to like get it to work. I mean, I guess the argument could be made if we don't focus on it too much, we'll just slide it in. People won't even know. Whereas if every time he's calling, they're like, would he do that? And to then support the end. So then I suppose an argument could be made either way.
Yeah, it didn't bother me that much, but it was just something I was watching. I was like, nope, come on. Oh, we all know this would never happen. But anyway, they all meet up at the wedding. Everything gets revealed, incidentally, because they all get into a conflict. But it's reveals that I knew. It's like revealed to each other, right? So I wasn't mad about like any reveals or anything. And then Charlie Day breaks up with Jane the Virgin again, or she breaks up with him, and Jenny Slate wasn't really dating the good place guy anyway, but he just has a great exit, and
he's got an amazing exit,
and then he's gone.
They could tell they were excited to have that guy on the show, or at least by the end of it, they were like, "We need more of him,
more get him back in here somehow." So that I think brings us to the ending now. So Jeff, I was kind of satisfied with all of this ending. I kind of liked that they didn't really shy away from the conflict at that point. Like they don't resolve it super cleanly, which I liked, because I was like, this would be lame if they just like Charlie Day and Jenny Slate automatically get together. Like they just realized, oh, it was you all along.
Everything you've talked about so far. In fact, I even thought the scene with like Charlie Day I thought the end scene with each couple was also really nice when he talks about like, I'm glad that we had this relationship. Like we went through a lot together and I wouldn't have traded that. Like we loved each other. I thought it was cool just to talk about this moment of time that you spend with someone that, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people with relationships are a zero-sum game. Like it either ends and it was worthless or it continues on and you win or whatever. But, you know, there is value in the relationships, even if you growing apart. So I like that. And then I enjoyed the boyfriend, the other being like, you didn't even like me. And he's like, it's stay away. Stay away from my wife. Like I thought that he wasn't joking. So I thought those were like some fun last little interactions. So anyway, all of that I'm fine with. What can you even guess the problem?
I guess. So is it really the final airplane scene? Is it that scene that you think is the I mean, this is the last 5 seconds of the film.
Absolutely, it is the last 5 seconds of this movie that I have a problem with. It does not work for very specific reasons.
See, so my thoughts are not that I feel like this is a big problem with the movie. Like when I watch it, I'm like, like I said, I feel like if they get cleanly back together, there's something very like about that. There's something also kind of about, I mean, you could kind of, again, the thing I was thinking is like, they're going for the ambiguous ending, right? They're kind of going for the Graduate sort of ambiguous ending where
I don't think it was that ambiguous.
It wasn't that ambiguous. You get the sense that they'll probably get back together, but it's not a lock. It's not like a scene that confirms something like that is going to happen.
Pretty strong googly eyes at that point.
She's doing the googly eye. Yeah, but it's not like a profession. Like they don't kiss. They don't profess their love. They don't go, oh, we're getting back together. That's what I mean.
I like that. I agree.
Like all of that would have been too over the top. But this isn't the kind of movie I think that was going to pull off like a bittersweet, like an Annie Hall type ending, right?
It's definitely a positive ending to me at the end. I thought,
and it had to be, I think, because I don't think you can pull off like, oh, they never get back together, but it's bittersweet or what have you.
Terrible.
So honestly, I'm a little, I can't, I'm having trouble guessing. I don't know what it is.
So the problem that all people obviously know when they watch this movie, including Steve, he's just not saying it.
Just unconsciously. My subconscious knows. My conscious does not.
It doesn't give the payoff that it could because he knows that that's what she wants. When the things fall, because they are the ones that had the argument, and then he does that, him doing that is the same as being like in the, like when they're there in the wedding, he's like, I love you, you're my one, you say that there's the person that gets under your skin and stuff. Like he knows the things that she wants, and so he tells her those things, and it does not work. And so by him doing the mask, it's the same thing. He's just doing something that he knows she wants. So it's no different. So there's no reason for this to win her over than the previous, besides time has happened. Maybe if it really seemed like they were going to die, maybe. But the mistake that the movie made was they needed to have her have like that argument with her ex or a friend and say that that's what she believes. And then we see that the ex doesn't. And that would help us understand why like she and the ex break up, would even support his line later about that. Like, did you even really like me? Then we know that that's something that she values. This idea of like, wouldn't it be great if I could find a man like would put me first? And then in the end scene, if Charlie Day just naturally does that because he cares about people, which you've seen by him taking care of like the older woman and prioritizing that. So it's built up that he would naturally do something like that. And then he just naturally does the thing that she says she's wanting. Then you get a much more powerful hit that fits the narrative, as opposed to something that's, I think that's why for you, the ending did feel perhaps more ambiguous than it did for me, because I was like, oh, here's what they were trying to do, and they messed it up. It felt ambiguous because he's not doing anything different than he did like the day before, being like, I love you, I want to be with you, and she's like, fuck you. Sorry. Like,
see, so your thesis is that in that moment he's not acting on instinct.
No.
This is a premeditated thing that he's like,
Yeah, he sees
this
the flaw.
circumstance has given me my perfect opportunity now,
right?
where I can do this thing and fool her into thinking that I'm really the one.
No,
and this is his master plan in this moment.
I think he's really into her for sure. And then the things fall, and he's like, "Oh, this is the things that she says she wants. I'll do the thing that I know she wants. Do you like me now?" That's exactly the same thing you did the previous day.
I think the movie does a fine enough job. That conversation was way earlier in the movie, so it's not the same thing that he was talking about then. And B, that it happens in this moment and he acts right away. Like they don't do a moment of. You're right. Like if there was a moment of him going, and then like.
Yeah, I don't have time for that.
That would be awful. That would be terrible. But I bought that he instinctually did this. I bought that he instinctually did this, even though intellectually he says this is what you shouldn't do.
Make sure it reads as instinctual as for him to not have.
I thought it read fine. I mean, this is where people are different. Different people are gonna respond to something differently. But I did not for a moment think, oh, he's going to take advantage of this situation right now.
As soon as it happened, as soon as the plane started shaking, I was like, oh, so the things are going to fall and he's going to do the thing and she's going to like, you can predict it. So it's right there.
Oh, you can predict. I knew it was going to happen. Yeah. I know it's predictable. If the argument is that it's predictable, yes, it's predictable.
And then that he's going to do the thing because he knows that that's what.
I don't think is just that's a reading. That's your reading of the film, but I don't think it's 100% like certain reading of the film. And if you wanted to do, if that was the point, if that was the intent, you would have filmed it. There's lots of ways that you could make that clear that that was the intent.
Well, I mean, I don't think they need to bother to take a moment for that. The idea is, again, he's just doing something that she wants, so then she's happy, right? But like I'm saying, because it's not coming from a place other than here's just another thing that I know about you, it's just weaker than it could have been to me. I mean, in a way that nobody could misconstrue it, right? Like in this way, so we have two different interpretations, right? That didn't need to happen. Like they could have built it in a way that there would only be one interpretation of the events.
See, I don't like your ending better. I mean, I don't think like this ending is great. But I think you are losing something from those weren't his words. That this is just happens to be something else that she wants that he does versus him doing something instinctually that he himself said he would not do. I actually kind of like that better because it's about, the character says one thing, but actually does another thing in the moment. Now, if you think that's Machiavellian, what he's doing, then yeah, I like get where that's problematic. But if you think that's, he's just acting differently than what he said, I think that's interesting character.
I like that interpretation of events. I like. That's good. I just don't think it reads that way at all. I mean, maybe if they could have filmed differently, then let us know down below. Did you think he was manipulating her in that last moment? Did you think he just 100%. Instinctually put the mask on her? 100%. He's like, this. Thank you, the circumstance gods, for giving me the exact I needed. I think another reason why I felt so that is because she comes in, she gets a seat right next to him. Where's his girlfriend, right? They would have the same return flight. So it's just these like completely unrealistic situation compounding itself. And I think that's what just like made it like, like just feel just not well thought out and put together. And you can see what they're going for, which is, I think, like a classic romantic comedy thing, like I've changed around, I'm different. Well, they're going for the ending of French Kiss, which happens on a plane. I think there are lots of romantic comedy things that end with planes or airports or something, but French Kiss comes to mind because I'm an ultimate Big Ryan fan. And it just... So this brings me more to my problem, that everything feels homage-y, that everything feels like, I was like, well, I'd rather be watching Addicted to Love, or I'd rather be watching French Kiss, because these are movies that not only
do I think they're better and got to like the same? Of course. Okay, so this was another idea in my head, is that maybe like as you get older, things that I think are good are just shadowy versions of something else that I just haven't seen, right? I mean, Nora Ephron at least tells you like Sleepless in Seattle is actually this movie, and that like You've Got Mail is actually this old movie, and I'm just like redoing them. But like other ones I don't think of that way. So Addicted to Love, I'm like, oh, this is the kind of this is an archetype for me that this movie is ripping off, but that movie must just be ripping off something from the 40s or 50s that I haven't seen, you know, and French Kiss must be doing the same thing, ripping off something that I haven't seen from back then. So like maybe that increases your dissatisfaction with movies as you become a crotchety old man, because you're like,
I think versus going crotchety old, at a certain point. It's like you've seen more, like we've just consumed more stories, so things have a less likely to be new. I think what's nice was, right, like clearly this movie did some things correctly, which is why we gave it a thumbs up, right? Which is why we're saying like still go watch it, because it still had some good moments. So I do think it's still possible to enjoy something, or if we do go back and look at the original, like I mean, I just watched a play version of something versus the movie version of something. And the play version is just way better. The play version came after it was an adaptation. And just from like a story standpoint of, how things are structured, I think it's much more powerful in the new version. So I think there.
What was this? Tell us what.
It was a White Christmas. No, it was Holiday Chris. I'm gonna look it up. I'll get it in a second. It's
the White Christmas. Is that like Bing Crosby or something? I don't even know.
It's a way old school movie that has some cultural problems that, like, if you go watch it on Prime, there's like a warning before of it. And I was watching the movie with my, I was like, this is it. And then we got to where like, oh my, like, it's just shocking. But the first things about it that we weren't liking as much is it's actually this, it's funny how it relates. I'm just going to very quickly do this. It's about where the cast is. In the movie, there's a guy who's like a singer dancer, and he's got kind of a crew, 2 other singer dancers, and he's like, I'm quitting, I'm moving out to the country, I'm done with like the rat race, you know what I mean? And in the movie, it ends up being like terrible, he hates it out there, and then he like keeps wanting to come back and tell his friends that everything's are good, even though it's not, and then he like ends up, conning someone to come out to like put on their own performances out there and stuff. It's just sort of weird. And I'm doing not the best version of describing it, but the point is that it's very back and forth. Whereas in the play, he gets there and he ends up finding good things about the smaller town. He ends up meeting someone there he really likes, and then he brings those people out to see the place and see the good things. And there are still some overlaps, but just structurally the play made a lot more sense. And I watched a play and I was like, oh, I really like this play. Like just the beats of the play, the story structure, I think work really well. And so it was fascinating for me to be like, oh, it's a movie? They probably just took those things. And I went back and it was different. And I was like, whoa, like props to who made this adaptation. Like very well done, recognizing an alternate way it could be done. So the reason I mentioned that is, of course, you talked about like Sleepless in Seattle and just this idea of things being redone in shadows. And I think that is one nice thing with adaptations or redoing, is you can improve in some ways or do something different or do something even better. And that can sound like sacrilege in some cases, right? Especially if someone loves the initial. But that's what's cool. And we are here to talk about adaptations, right? So we're at Adaptation Channel. But anyway.
So, I mean, the thing with this, though, is and to give my dissatisfaction maybe some justification, besides it being retreading this ground, is that and I think this is kind of a thing in newer movies, that it just feels so much looser, so much more kind of slapdash, and that it's kind of like marking time in a lot of ways, that it just, I don't know any other way to describe it, but the tightness of the plot, like how tight the plot is, how well everything kind of clicks into place. And maybe even this movie a little bit, to me, was lacking the like MacGuffins that allow the plot to click into place, right? So I was thinking of like Addicted to Love and like this whole MacGuffin of they're across, in the building next door, and
that's literally what I thought of
he's like
when
a
you said the movie.
telescope expert, right? So he's got like all these like light things to be able to magnify and to be able to
It's kind of like
spy.
rear window vibes to it.
Yeah,
me,
rear
almost
window
with that.
vibes to it. And but it just
Different
like
factor,
it keeps you very enclosed in this space. It keeps like the action in a certain area, and then like their revenge plot, they're working together on it, and it's just one revenge plot, and it escalates through the movie to the point where there's like a fist fight, you know, like it gets bigger and bigger, but it's not two branching separate ones that never really felt like they got bigger and bigger. It felt like
well, I mean,
kind of like
hers did with the menage a trois, and I guess supposed to with the jumping off the thing, right? I guess that's what it was, but it wasn't something that they had as much control over. You know what I mean? Like I would say to a degree.
Yeah, and that's just kind of mixing in the like personal growth stories that both of them are forced to endure during the film, which I also don't like. You know how I don't like growing, or our characters are growing, especially when you know exactly how they're going to grow because it's telegraphed from the very beginning.
Yeah. For sure.
And then like the kid plot with her, like we have to spend this time with this kid, and it's like, okay, I mean, there are like some nice moments in it, but it's just like this
but you could tell where it's going. You're like,
you can tell where it's going, you know it. It's not surprising.
Like, this is gonna be your thing, right?
It's like exactly. You just have to march through this because with no sense of interest or like but you have to, because characters have to grow and change or some bullshit like that. So like it just feels like, unlike these other movies, like, and then I think of like French Kiss and like the plot mechanics that make that go, like he's smuggling the necklace or whatever, and that's how they get like wrapped up with each other because he needs her to get through customs with it, so he's conning her. And there's a reason, especially in the beginning of I Want You Back, I was thinking of these other movies and I'm like, oh, there's such a reason why these two people are together,
right?
And then it even is kind of biting off of Harry Met Sally a little bit, in that they're in Harry Met Sally, they're both jilted when they kind of finally become friends. But like kind of the genius of that movie is how it jumps ahead in time in a way like I've never really seen that many other movies do.
It's so bold in that way.
Yeah, and then like incidentally meeting during those like three separate times makes you buy so much more after they're both jilted and they hang out that they would,
because you need time for things to
happen. They have some history with each other in Harry Met Sally, so you kind of buy that, oh, now they're hanging out and they become friends over this common jilting.
So I was just gonna say, so something that I wouldn't expect to be using as an example here, but like Asian cinema, Asian period pieces that my wife has been watching recently on various channels, they'll just be like 5 years later. And then we can see what's been happening to like the prince and princess, right? But it makes certain plot lines make so much more sense because something wouldn't have happened right yet. It would take this long for a rebellion army to build all its whip and everything, and it works. And I feel like I'm not going to go so far as to say we're afraid of that as writers with rom-coms, but it feels like that's not the go-to. But it makes relationships feel a lot more real because they often do take place over a longer stretch of time. So I would say the one other movie that I've seen recently where there was more of kind of a reason that two people were stuck together, as weird as it was the most recent kind of Groundhog Day movie.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about. It's
Palm Springs.
Yeah, Palm Springs. So that one I thought, I mean, it's completely story created, this fantasy looping timeline, right? But at least they were forced together, and we were forced to see them spend time together and then grow apart, and then that kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting. But anyway.
Another movie where I was like, okay, it's fine, it's pleasant, but why am I watching Groundhog Day again? Especially like when
just watching Groundhog Day,
I'll just watch Groundhog Day again. That is an awesome romantic comedy. It works really well. Like you buy the like these two people hate each other, then they like each other later. I mean, there's no that movie's unimpeachable. And like any other movie, I would not have the balls to write a movie where you're gonna have stuck in the same day repeating looping, because how do you even have the cojones to write that movie knowing Groundhog Day, the perfect movie already?
The perfect movie. I think Happy Death Day did a good job with it, because it was because they did.
Well, that's a horror movie, right?
It's a horror movie.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
That's what I was gonna say. So I think if you take a premise but you change genre, then that livens it up to a degree. Like another example of that, I know we're going far afield here, but I feel like this is all connected. The more recent Vince Vaughn movie that was basically just where you're trading bodies. Like, you know, the movies where a parent and a kid will like trade bodies. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right. So it's Freaky Friday, right? So it's that. Okay. I always think of there was a guy spin-off of Freaky Friday where there was like a father and son that did it. It was like Kirk Cameron and I think it was like Dustin. But anyway, so the point here is that there was a recent Vince Vaughn movie where trades places, right? But
never heard of this.
Places with the killer. So that was cool, where like this high school girl trades bodies with the killer. The killer is Vince Vaughn. So now this is high school girl and Vince Vaughn, the murderer's body, and then this murderer is in this high school girl's body. That was cool, right? I'm not saying it's the best movie I've ever seen, but it made me go like, oh yeah, that is a fun permutation, fun take on the body switch premise. And so like that's exciting to me, of like taking a premise that maybe we've seen before, but then like really doing something kind of different with it. So yeah, I'd say there can be like that. I would say I would have more bravery, I think, writing a repeated Groundhog Day thing if I was doing that in a fantasy world, which, by the way, is one of the most successful. I think it's like the top rated, as we're talking about this weirdly, the top rated fantasy story on Royal Roads, or one of, and it's real big. It's Mother of Learning, it's called, and it's about this kid who's like in a magic school, and the day ends up repeating over and over and over again. And it's one of the most, so these types of ideas, whatever you want to call them, can then be placed into different genres, I think, with success. So
they can be.
Well, I just think it's Happy Death Day made a whole bunch of movies, so it did well enough to get more.
Yeah, no. I think all of these things have done well. That other one that was like on,
I don't know how the Vince Vaughn one did.
With that one girl. Here's the thing. I'm calling a moratorium on it, y'all. I know, like, it's popular. People like this idea. They go, "Ooh, I'm gonna put this in fantasy instead," and then like it's successful because people like the original idea. But each one, y'all, it's a copy of a copy of a copy. Every time we do it, you're just diluting it. You're just making it a shadowy version of itself.
Right? Sleepless in Seattle, as you're saying, is just a copy of something else.
I don't really like Sleepless in Seattle.
But the point here is that I think the redos can be done well. I think it's easy to say, oh, it's been done before, so it's going to be bad, right? And I do think as you've seen more things, then you can kind of go in maybe with like, oh, wait, this is the same. But I do think there is room for creativity. I just think it's harder. I would say, so I do agree with you that the base might be, oh, you're redoing something. But I think there can be a cool story to be told. You just have to get, your creative juices really flowing to make it your own thing. Or if it's the first time someone's seeing it, then it's fine, right? Because that's what keeps happening. Like some of the new Spider-Mans are some people's first Spider-Man. That to them is what Spider-Man is. You know what I mean? So there is also that kind of like continuous cycle of the audience renewing itself, right? But with romantic comedies, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think we're poised for a resurgence of romantic comedy movies?
I think part of is the problem, and this is also, I think, maybe part of the problem with comedies as well. I think we need more high concept back. I think I think maybe what made some of these other romantic comedies tick is the like MacGuffins of them. That drive the plot, that make it a little bit more screwball, versus like, oh, we are just following these two people through random mundanity. I feel like we need to un-Judd Apatow ourselves. I think that man maybe has like done the most damage to all comedy and all romantic comedy by making it like, oh, we just follow these people around. Like the other one that's completely left my mind. I'm not even gonna remember. Always Be My Maybe, I think we watched as well, my wife and I, and like that got some hype. I can't tell you anything about. I can't tell you anything that happened except that Keanu Reeves was in it for a second.
Dude, I will never forget Keanu Reeves listening to cow noises while he is.
I don't even remember the cow noises part.
They put on the headphones for the cows that they're eating. They're like, moo. Yeah. So I enjoyed the cast. The cast in the movie was great.
Right, and I think that I never really have a huge problem with. I mean, they're never going to be Meg Ryan, but I still like the actors and it's just though I think you need something even like Meg Ryan's Dubois. If you look at it, like a lot of the like IQ is another one that she did that it just has this kind of like bigger, goofier idea that it's a romantic comedy, but there's sort of also this kind of straight comedy story that you're basically putting a romantic twist on part of the plot, right? But that it's not like just solely that there's this whole other kind of plot going on that isn't really just purely about these two people. And I think like that's what romantic comedy needs. The other one that she did later era, Kate and Leopold, like has this whole kind of time travel plot to it. And also like I don't know if anybody thinks that's a great movie, but I would put that above these romantic comedies that I just saw and like how much I enjoyed them. Because there's like another axis or something that it's operating on.
You're right. There is something, because I was just going to say, I feel like I see good romantic comedy relationships in TV shows. Like I enjoy the romantic comedy relationships in Good Place, for instance, as we're talking about that, right? But it obviously had a whole other thing that it was working with that then the romantic thing happened within.
Yeah.
So no, I do see what you're saying with that. I mean, obviously, Palm Springs had one.
Just which is maybe come up with an original one,
which is why which is maybe why I did well. I mean, time travel is the most real. I think what made Kate and Leopold work was again the two actors were just so I mean, they're amazing. Yeah. But I think the two mains in Always Be My Maybe were great. I just wanted the writing to be a little bit stronger in it. I think I don't know. I just feel like going back. Some of those movies are just, I'm going back on purpose to make sure it's not rose tinted glasses. Like the writing is just cleaner. It's like how we'll often talk about like Ghostbusters being like so clean. Oh, like it's like there's a few things that I watch. I'm like, I don't even know if I can ever write that well. But like it's just so well paced. You know what I mean? Like each part builds on itself. And I feel like we just haven't seen one break out. And I think when there is one, it'll be huge. I think it'll be, massive. Like when it comes out, because I think people want it. People want to watch a romantic comedy, because like a good romantic comedy. Yeah. I mean, who does? Guys may say they just want to watch their action movies and stuff, but like the good romantic comedy, I think is nice. You know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for the Marvel romantic comedy movie. That's what they need to do, right? Like, I guess the closest they got was WandaVision, maybe. But not really, right? Like Loki was the buddy cop movie. Okay, cool. Give me the romantic comedy Marvel. I know you got the money.
That's what they seem to be doing in the television shows. I'm interested in the She-Hulk that they bring out. I don't think that'll be a romantic comedy, but I think I would be surprised if it doesn't have some sort of romantic subplot.
Well, she's great. Have you seen her like Orphan Black and stuff? She's
Tatiana Maslany, I think her name is, and I'd be surprised if it doesn't have something like that. They're definitely doing that in the TV shows. They're like going for genres, going very specifically at genres, which kind of makes the television more interesting to me right now than the movies are. Even if there's sometimes misses, I like how there's wildly different tones, especially
Like
because
the
the Marvel
trend
movies,
stuff.
one of the complaints about Marvel movies is they always kind of feel like they have the same tone. Whereas
Mm.
the television shows, I don't think you can level that at the television
I
shows.
wouldn't say
They
that.
feel very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe, I mean, the future of romantic comedies, it's in your hands, Marvel. It's in your
High
hands.
concept.
Because
Do
we know
it.
DC is not doing it.
Bring it to your DC. DC's just grimdark all the way.
All right, it's totally grimdark. Totally grimdark. Oh, cool. Well, definitely, like I said, I just want to talk about this movie because I think maybe I'm also itching for, a romantic comedy that I can just like thoroughly love and be like, I loved watching this movie. And I would agree with you. The romantic comedies I've watched recently, but like, I like that. I think that was fun. And this one, I don't know. This one I felt like I had, as I was going through it, I was like, I'm liking this movie. Oh, I'm liking this movie a lot. But yeah, it just didn't, it ended up, because of this narrative structure, as you correctly pointed out, and just sort of the way it came together at the end with a couple unrealistic elements, I just felt like it didn't have what it could have, which is a shame. But still enjoyable. I would still recommend people go watch it. If you've got a great romantic comedy that we've missed, because clearly we like them, let us know. I would
Maybe
love
we
to
should
watch
do
it.
that. Like in the
Amazing romantic
comments,
comedy.
y'all should start steering the ship. What is there anything you want us to watch and fight about?
Because we'll
Do
happily
you
fight about
have
it.
the new romantic comedy that's gonna like knock our socks off? We
I
will
would-
watch it. We
I
will
would
watch
happily-
whatever that y'all want to make us watch. Tell us down below in the comments. We will watch it. We will fight about it.
I think that's a pretty easy ask. It's a pretty easy ask. But yeah, so no, for sure. And props, obviously it can be an adaptation, because I wasn't expecting this conversation was getting more about endings, but it ended up being kind of an adaptation from all these other romantic comedies, which is perfect because we do love adaptations. So bonus points if the romantic comedy that you can recommend to us was a book originally or had a previous movie, but it doesn't have to. But it is nice if we can go back and talk source material a bit, because that is our jam. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye, everybody.